Nike is in emergency mode right now, and I think that fact deserves more attention than it's been getting. One of the largest sportswear companies on the planet, a company that has navigated the merchandise demands of Super Bowl runs, championship seasons, and the commercial explosions of the biggest names in professional sports for decades, has been caught completely flat-footed by a quarterback who has not played a single regular season game in 2026. Production lines are running over capacity. External manufacturing partners are being brought in through contracts that were not part of the original plan. The number 2 Cleveland Browns jersey with Sanders on the back is generating demand that Nike's forecasting models, apparently built on assumptions about what a 5th-round draft pick could commercially produce, failed to anticipate by a margin that is embarrassing for a brand of that scale. I want to tell you exactly how this happened, why it happened, and what it reveals about a player that the market understood long before most professional evaluators were willing to admit. Start with the number itself, because this entire story begins and ends with what the number 2 actually means to Shedeur Sanders, and I don't think that meaning has been properly explained in most places covering the jersey demand. This isn't a jersey number in the way most players have jersey numbers, a practical administrative designation assigned based on position group conventions and roster availability. The number 2 has been at the center of Shedeur's intentional identity construction since his high school years at Trinity Christian in Texas. He built his personal apparel line around it. 2 Legendary, a brand he developed with real intention and real long-term vision well before the NFL was anything other than a future aspiration. When Colorado retired it in his honor before he had taken a professional snap, that wasn't a ceremonial gesture from a program that liked him. That was a school formally recognizing that the number had become inseparable from the athlete's identity in a way that transcended normal player-program relationships. The number 2, for anyone who had been paying attention to Shedeur Sanders' career from its beginning, was never just a digit. It was a statement of identity that he had been building meaning around for years. When he arrived in Cleveland and discovered that veteran wide receiver DeAndre Carter was already wearing number 2, the way Shedeur handled it revealed something important about his character and his discipline. He didn't make a production of it. He didn't apply pressure publicly or create a narrative around the situation that would have generated headlines and sympathy. He took number 12, a number with zero personal or cultural significance for him, and went to work. And what happened with that number 12 jersey is the part of this story that should have been Nike's first serious warning signal about what was coming. A 5th-round pick, wearing a number that wasn't his, on a team that finished 5-12, became the highest-selling jersey in his entire 2025 NFL draft class. He outsold every quarterback selected ahead of him. He outsold every skill position player drafted before pick 144. That had never happened in NFL history. A 5th-round selection leading his class in jersey sales. Not in a close race, not as a statistical curiosity. Clearly, demonstrably, by the kind of margin that should have triggered a significant reassessment of whatever commercial projections the league's merchandise infrastructure had built around him. I want to think through why the number 12 demand was so commercially significant in retrospect, because understanding it explains everything that came after. Jersey purchases are not impulsive. A fan buying a player's jersey is making a statement of belief. Belief in the player's future, belief in what the player represents, belief that the association is worth the financial and social commitment of wearing that name and number publicly. A 5th-round pick generating that level of jersey commitment before he had played meaningful professional football wasn't being driven by on-field achievement. It was being driven by something more durable and more powerful: narrative attachment. The fans who bought the number 12 jersey weren't buying a record or a championship. They were buying into a story. The story of a player the league had tried to diminish through its draft process who refused to be diminished. That story was already fully formed and fully resonant before Shedeur threw a single professional pass. The number 12 sales were the market's way of telling anyone paying attention that the commercial foundation here was unlike anything a 5th-round pick had produced before. And Nike, apparently, wasn't paying close enough attention. Or if they were, their forecasting models weren't built to account for what was actually happening. Because when March 30th, 2026 arrived and DeAndre Carter's departure opened the number 2 spot, and the Browns confirmed immediately that Shedeur was reclaiming it, what happened next was not a gradual build. It was not the measured, predictable merchandise demand that planning systems are designed around. Shedeur posted a single item on X, just the number. No caption, no announcement, no promotional language. 2. And the internet responded in real time with the kind of coordinated consumer surge that retail infrastructure isn't built to handle. Fans who had been waiting, some of them for over a year, for exactly this moment didn't browse or deliberate. They went straight to purchase. People who had already bought the number 12 jersey started calling retailers about exchange policies within hours. The online queues became unmanageable. Websites experienced traffic volume that exceeded what their systems had been architected to support. And Nike's supply chain, built around projections that apparently didn't model this scenario, found itself immediately and significantly behind demand. The response Nike has been forced into is worth dwelling on for a moment, because it reveals the actual severity of the miscalculation. Bringing in external manufacturing partners isn't a routine capacity adjustment. For a company with Nike's scale and supply chain sophistication, that kind of move represents an acknowledgement that internal systems have been overcome, that the established production and distribution architecture cannot solve this problem without outside assistance. These are not decisions a brand makes lightly, especially with the contractual complexity and quality control challenges that come with rapid external partnership expansion. Nike going this route is the corporate equivalent of calling for reinforcements because the standard deployment isn't sufficient. And the thing that makes it genuinely remarkable is that this is happening before the 2026 regular season has begun, before a single meaningful game has been played, before the jersey demand that accompanies actual on-field performance, first starts, big moments, wins in critical situations, has materialized. Nike is in emergency response mode during the preseason build-up, which raises an obvious and somewhat uncomfortable question about what their supply chain is going to look like when the actual football starts producing the moments that jersey demand historically follows. I keep returning to the Avon moment because I think it captures something about Shedeur's commercial reality that statistics and sales figures can't fully convey. Someone was at a high school football game in Avon, Ohio. Not an NFL event, not a promotional appearance, just an ordinary Friday night of local football, and noticed 8 different people in the crowd, completely unconnected to each other, all wearing Shedeur Sanders jerseys. No coordinated fan club, no organized promotional activity. No one telling these people to show up in the same gear. Just 8 individuals who independently decided that this jersey was worth wearing to a high school game in Northeast Ohio. That's not brand power in the conventional sense. Brand power is what Nike manufactures through advertising spend and celebrity association and strategic placement. What that Avon crowd was expressing is something different. Genuine organic attachment to a player whose story has connected with people in ways that predate any formal marketing effort and operate independently of any organizational endorsement. That organic attachment is the thing that Nike's models consistently undervalue for players outside the traditional commercial categories because it doesn't announce itself in advance. First-round quarterbacks generate predictable commercial interest. The draft position signals the attention signals the potential audience, and the merchandise operation builds around that signal. A 5th-round pick doesn't generate that advanced signal, so the models assume the commercial interest will scale accordingly. What Shedeur's situation demonstrates is that organic cultural attachment, the kind built over years through performance and identity and narrative, can produce commercial results that completely detach from draft position as a predictive variable. The market had already made its evaluation of Shedeur Sanders long before the NFL's draft process made its different evaluation. And the market, as it turns out, was significantly more accurate. Let me put the full picture of what Shedeur accomplished in his first professional season in front of you, because I think it deserves the kind of clear presentation that gets lost in the noise of the surrounding narratives. He was the 144th pick. He wore a number that wasn't his. He went 3-4 as a starter on a team that finished 5-12. He threw 10 interceptions that gave critics exactly what they needed to sustain the dismissive framing they'd been building since before the draft. He had no preseason preparation and no first-team reps before being inserted into games. And within all of those circumstances, he led his entire draft class in jersey sales, made the Pro Bowl as the first Cleveland Browns quarterback to achieve that in nearly 20 years, and produced statistical numbers that an independent scout later compared favorably to quarterbacks who had been given every resource and every advantage from day one. The combination of what Shedeur achieved on the field, off the field, and in the commercial marketplace, despite circumstances that were designed, whether intentionally or not, to minimize his opportunity, is genuinely without precedent for a player selected where he was selected. Now add the number 2 back into that picture, the number he built his identity around, the number Colorado retired in his honor, the number that forms the foundation of the brand he constructed with real intention across multiple years. When that number went back onto a Cleveland Browns jersey with his name attached to it, the fans who had been emotionally invested in this story weren't just buying merchandise. They were completing a narrative arc that had been building since draft night. The wait for number 2 was itself part of the story. Another obstacle, another moment of being denied something that was his, that he handled with the same quiet discipline he has brought to every challenge since arriving in the league. And when it finally came back, the release of that pent-up consumer energy was instantaneous and overwhelming. Nike built a dam without understanding how much water was behind it. The deeper question that this jersey situation raises, and it's a question that I think extends well beyond merchandise, is what happens when Shedeur Sanders takes the field in that number 2 jersey for the first regular season snap of 2026. The commercial infrastructure around him is already straining under preseason demand. His story already has the full shape of something that people have invested in emotionally and financially before the performance has had the chance to justify that investment in the conventional way. When the performance follows, and everything from the coaching staff's reported commitment to the scouts' independent evaluation to the voluntary workout attendance patterns suggests it will be given the genuine opportunity to follow, what happens to that commercial demand curve is something no one at Nike's forecasting desk appears to have modeled successfully yet. The number 12 jersey was the proof of concept that should have changed the assumptions. It told anyone willing to read the market signal clearly that Shedeur Sanders operates in a commercial category that his draft position doesn't predict, and his on-field record at that point didn't fully explain. The demand was real, it was organic, and it was pointing towards something much larger. Nike missed that signal or discounted it. And now, before a game has been played in 2026, they're in emergency response mode, contracting external partners, racing to fill a supply gap that their projections created, and presumably spending a significant amount of internal time reconsidering the models they used to underestimate this player's commercial power for the second time in 12 months. The number 2 is back on a Cleveland Browns jersey. The market has already responded in terms that required one of the largest sportswear companies in the world to call for outside help. And the season hasn't started yet. What happens when Shedeur Sanders steps into a huddle as the confirmed starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, wearing the number he spent a year waiting to reclaim, in front of a fan base that has been building emotional investment in this moment since draft night 2025? That's not a question Nike's current supply chain is positioned to answer comfortably. The market already told everyone who was paying attention what this player means to the people who follow him. The emergency manufacturing contracts are simply the latest confirmation that the people who were supposed to be paying attention weren't paying attention closely enough. That changes now. The number 2 is back. And if everything the evidence suggests about what's coming on the field turns out to be accurate, the merchandise operation scrambling today hasn't seen anything yet.